begin. Welcome everyone. I'm Reshma, and today our topic for the evening is knowledge of the absolute, which you can all see on your screen. This is actually the title of chapter 7 of a text called the Bhagavad-gita. And I'll go into what the Bhagavad-gita is in a moment. But the question that might be on all of your minds is, why chapter 7? Why have I chosen this theme? Why have I chosen this chapter? And I have a simple but profound answer to that question. That is that I like it. I love it. And we'll see why a statement like that is profound shortly. But we're going to explore the key insights from this chapter together this evening. So, as I mentioned, the Bhagavad-gita, I want to give an overview of what it is, so we're all on the same page. So the Bhagavad-gita is a Sanskrit term which translates in English to the Lord's Song or God's Song. And it touches on many key points that together paint a picture of reality or the absolute. So we'll go through some of these themes now. We have identity, there's 5 themes in total. So one of them is identity. And this touches on who we actually are. And according to the Bhagavad Gita, we are spiritual beings, we are souls. The next theme is activity. So after this understanding of who we are, what do we do with that? How are we supposed to act in the world on the basis of that knowledge? And interestingly, in Sanskrit, the activity translates to karma. And I'm sure a lot of people have come across that concept. Justin Timberlake songs, it's in a lot of songs. What goes around comes around. It's a very common concept. But the Gita goes into what it actually means. What's the science behind karma? Then we have, we have material nature. What is this material world? What is material nature? And we'll touch on that later. Time, how is this all operating on a time scale? I mentioned that we're spiritual beings. Gita also says that we're eternal beings, but everything we see in the material world seems to be temporary. There's birth and there's death. So how do we reconcile these two concepts? That's also explored in the Gita. And then we have the concept of God. Who is God? What is God? So I just wanted to give an overview of what the Gita is, as the talk is based on that today. And we'll come across all of these themes. So the Bhagavad Gita is actually, there's a dialogue going on in the text of the Bhagavad Gita. And it's between 2 people. We have Arjuna. Arjuna is experiencing an existential crisis. He doesn't know, he's lost all composure, in his own words. That's what he says at the introduction to the Gita. And he's just facing what seems like an insurmountable challenge. And what he does in this state is he turns to Krishna for guidance. Krishna is a name for God, a name for the Lord, and it means the all-attractive, the one who attracts the mind and the heart, one who captivates the mind and the heart. So yes, I just wanted to set the scene a little bit. Arjuna is asking questions and Krishna is answering them. So now we go on to knowledge of the absolute, the title of chapter 7. So firstly, I want to tackle this term, absolute. What does that even mean? And I recognize it's a complex subject matter. In the general sense of the word, the way it's kind of generally used, is something being absolute means that it's true, it's right, it's valid universally. The best way to understand it is if we contrast it to relative. The opposite of absolute is relative. So something that's absolute, it's an absolute truth, and it's not conditioned, it doesn't have a conditional nature. It's not based on anything relative. And I'm going to be focusing on presenting the concept of the absolute as it's presented in the Bhagavad Gita. So let's get into it. We have here text in the Bhagavad-gita. And this is where Krishna is beginning to speak about this knowledge of the absolute. So Krishna says to Arjuna, he's speaking to Arjuna, he says, I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. Very exciting. I hope everyone's excited. I remember reading this and thinking, oh, something's about to happen. I've underlined these two words here, phenomenal and numinous. Phenomenal refers to things that can be known through our sense perception, things that we can perceive through our senses. And numinous knowledge relates to spiritual concepts, things that are to be known that are outside of our ability to perceive them through our material senses. So Krishna says both of these combined, this phenomenal knowledge that he's about to discuss, this numinous knowledge he's about to discuss, both of these constitute everything that needs to be known. And so from what I took from that was that both of these things form this understanding of the absolute, all that is to be known. So one of the first concepts that Krishna introduces in this chapter, in text 4 and 5, the first concept is this distinction between matter and spirit. Does anybody want to read both of these verses?
I can read.
Go for it, Prajimna. Thank you.
So the first one is earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. Besides these, O mighty arm Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mine which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature.
Thanks, Prajimna. So text 4 on the left here, Krishna is talking about his material energies. And we can see here that there are material elements that are listed. We have earth, water, fire, air. These are physical elements that we all have an understanding of because we can physically perceive them. And when Krishna is saying earth, water, fire, he's referring to solids, liquids, and gases, all of these things that create this picture of material, things that are material in this world. And then the next line, it gets quite interesting. We can see that through the list, the elements are getting more and more subtle in terms of their properties. In the next line, we have mind, intelligence, and false ego. Now, when I read that, I found it really interesting that these things were classed as material. But we're not going to go into it for this session. However, I am really interested in this, and actually I'm interested in psychology. So the idea of the mind being material is a personal interest of mine. So stay tuned if we have another session and I'm facilitating, that's the topic. Look at that. So, okay, material energies. And then we see in the next verse on the right, Krishna is talking about spiritual energy. And interestingly, he says this is his superior energy. So there's already a distinction that's being made between matter and spirit in that one's considered inferior and one's considered superior. And even more interestingly, Krishna says this superior energy comprises the living entity. So if we remember when we spoke about identity, I said the Bhagavad Gita presents living entities as being spiritual in nature, a spirit soul. And so, a lot of people say, I have a soul, but actually what this is showing is, no, you are the soul and you have a body, which is made up of these material elements. This statement here that Krishna makes about exploiting the resources of material nature, what that's touching on is that if we are spiritual in nature, then being in contact with the material environment can cause us to misidentify ourselves with that material environment. And but actually there's so much more to us than that. And we'll touch on this theme as we go on throughout. So we've touched on the distinction between matter and spirit here. And now, if you noticed in those verses, Krishna is saying these are my energies. So what is the source of these energies then? I've picked out some quotes from text 6 through to text 12. And I'm just going to read them out. Very, very poetic. The Gita is very beautifully spoken. Krishna speaks so poetically and so wonderfully. So this is Krishna speaking. He says, I am the light of the sun and moon. I am the taste of water. Ramananda just took a sip of something there. Was that water? Krishna's the taste of that.
It can't be tastier than mint tea, surely.
Krishna is the taste of water. I'm the original fragrance of the earth. I'm the origin and dissolution of creation. That's referring to. And a personal favorite, everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. Got a visual aid for everybody here. Everything rests on Krishna like this. I'm the life of all that lives. But the most interesting statement amongst all of these is when Krishna says, I am, in one sense, everything. So Krishna is showing how through his energies, he is present in everything, but he makes a very interesting statement. He says, but I am independent. So to this term of God is referred to impersonality. Did I lose connection there?
Yes, I didn't hear you when you were on the last bit. If you go back one, right at the end, I missed that part. I don't know if anyone else.
That's fine. I think it's our end. It's raining, so it always gets a bit funny. Apologies for that. So I'll just repeat this quote. I am in one. Krishna says, I am in one sense everything. And as we saw from the previous quotes, we're seeing that how Krishna is present in his energies, and those energies can be, they're all pervasive. But he says, I am independent. A very interesting statement here. So who is this I? What is this? How do we understand this independence? And that brings us to this term, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna is referred to in Vedic literature, like the Bhagavad-gita, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead many, many times. Let's break this down. Godhead refers to divine nature, something of divine nature, and is often referred to when we're talking about God in many different theologies and philosophies. Supreme means nothing equal to or above. For something to be supreme, it means there can't be anything equal to or above it. Otherwise, there's no meaning to the word supreme. And this is interesting because this shows that the Bhagavad Gita is presenting a monotheistic view of there being one God. And this is actually touched on in the later verses in chapter 7, which I haven't included in this presentation. But if anybody's interested, then, in fact, if anybody's interested in getting their hands on the Bhagavad Gita, please just get in contact with us. And we'll be happy to arrange for you to have that. So yes, nothing equal to above, a monotheistic view. And then we have this very interesting term, personality, the use of I that Krishna is using. So what is personality referring to? Well, personhood, being a person. Personhood is being a person and interacting with others as people. And what this does is it allows us to have relationships where we give and receive love, for instance, which many would say is the greatest joy in life. A recent example of how important we hold this is just Christmas. Christmas was effectively cancelled because of COVID here in the UK I'm sure in other places around the world it was the case as well. And so many people are upset. Why? It's because it's a time where people come together, they get together, exchange gifts, they celebrate how enriching relationships are. So we are social beings. And if our experience in this world is fulfilling in this way, how can it be that when we consider our spiritual identity and our actual nature as spiritual beings, how can we think that that is devoid of personhood? So Krishna is saying that we're eternal spiritual beings, but he's also saying that we retain our individuality. We retain that. We retain our personality. So at the beginning of the presentation, I said it's a profound statement to say that I went with chapter 7 because I like it. It's profound because it's celebrating we are individual and we have personality. And Krishna here is saying that he too has a personality. In verse 24 in chapter 7, Krishna says, the unwise think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, I was impersonal before, I was formless before, and I've just assumed this personality. When I'm speaking this Bhagavad-gita, when I'm speaking these teachings, I've just assumed this personality. But actually, Krishna says, I have a higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. So bringing this all back home to the concept of the absolute, we can see here that the absolute, being the source of everything, is a person. The person that's the source of these energies, material and spiritual, the source of us as eternal souls. What this does is it allows us to, as people, approach God, who's a person. So let's go on to our next slide here. Approaching Krishna. I've called this slide Approaching Krishna. Would someone like to read this verse? Just feel free to unmute and go ahead.
I can do it. So, 4 kinds of pious people begin to worship me: the distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the absolute.
Thanks, Catherine. So yeah, these are the 4 groups. Krishna, this is text 16 of the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna is saying there's 4 groups of people that tend to come to me to worship me. And we can see here that in these groups of people, there are different agendas. Somebody that's approaching Krishna with, because they're distressed, they're looking for some relief from that distress. Somebody that's looking for wealth, and wealth doesn't just mean monetary gain or financial gain. Wealth actually just refers to material comforts, better material facilities. So somebody may approach Krishna to kind of enjoy things a bit better in this world. Somebody who's just looking to satisfy their curiosity. These groups of people, they start to entertain that there is something divine, there is something beyond them. But in the next verse, Krishna says, of these, one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best, for I am very dear to him and he is dear to me. So Krishna is highlighting that some people, they have a difference in mood when it comes to approaching him. These people, they're in the process of cultivating knowledge and they're engaged in something called pure devotional service. Now we'll come on to what that means in a moment. But I just wanted to flag that we can see here there's a difference in intimacy, in connection, because somebody is considering a relationship in a different way. And we can see that through Krishna's words. He says, I am dear to him and he is dear to me. So what that is now going to bring us on to is something called bhakti-yoga. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is identifying different paths that people may adopt for self-realization. And the previous six chapters are concerned with these different paths. Here, Krishna is pointing to something called bhakti-yoga. And Krishna identifies this as a path where we come to self-realization, realization of ourselves, realization of the Supreme, and our relationship with him. So I've kind of broken down the terms. They're Sanskrit words. Yoga in Sanskrit means to join or to unite or to connect. The root of the word is yuj in Sanskrit. And bhakti translates as loving devotion. So the process of bhakti yoga is connecting with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, through loving devotional service. So before we move on, I just wanted to ask everyone here, feel free to unmute and answer. I wanted to ask, when somebody prioritizes a relationship in their life, when there's a relationship that's meaningful to them, what do you all think is involved in the blossoming of that relationship? Or at least just maintaining the relationship? You just feel free to unmute and share.
Nurturing.
Nurturing, thanks Jagopalana. Yeah, definitely. Rupa. Rupa Velasco, did you have? Oh, it's just the unmute.
Respect.
Connection or communication.
Did I unmute?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I was going to say trust.
Trust, nice. Thank you. Did someone else say something?
Communication or connection.
Thank you, yeah. Anyone else?
Respect and admiration.
Respect and admiration, thank you. Yeah,
Being thoughtful.
Thoughtful, did you say, Shivali?
Yeah, about the needs of the individual.
Yeah, definitely. I like that one. I had some others down here as well. Or did you have anything? Some question?
People already stole it.
He said people stole his. So yes, I also had time. You devote some time to that relationship. Some energy, some sacrifice. And it's touching on your point, Shivali, here, that you said you consider another person. You're not just focused on your self-interest. It's not just about you and how this person can satisfy your needs. You actually consider another person. You look beyond yourself, basically. And so all of the things that everybody touched on, for me, and I'm sure others, they seem to constitute this understanding of loving devotion. They all filter into that broad term of loving devotion. Because loving devotion in terms of a relationship is a very active thing. After all, to love, it's a verb. It can be an emotion, it can be something that someone feels, but it's also a verb. To love someone, to love something, to direct loving propensity. And so when a relationship is meaningful, you devote yourself to it and you work on it, which brings us to bhakti yoga in practice. Now, bhakti is relationship based and it's actually reciprocal. It's not one-sided. So I liked that a lot of the concepts that people came up with there, trust and respect, it touches on this idea of reciprocation, and we'll come on to that. Bhakti yoga is a lifestyle. It's a process. When we have a goal in life, and in this context, our goal is to re-establish our relationship with God, our life reflects that. Just as when somebody is aiming to run a marathon, for instance, if they're an athlete or they're trying to develop some kind of athletic ability, there are certain things that they adopt in their life to keep them on track. Otherwise, having a goal, I mean, you're not working towards it. And so here I've listed some key aspects that are integral to the life of a practitioner of Bhakti Yoga. The first one is cultivating knowledge. Now, the entire premise of the Bhagavad-gita, like, as I said, it's a dialogue, it's questions. We begin to question things about those 5 themes. And we're encouraged to do that on the path of Bhakti Yoga. Questioning doesn't stop. And that makes it more practical. We see things in the world and we're trying to see how the teachings in the Bhagavad-gita apply to them. I've also put here company. I'm sure everyone here has had the experience of the power of association, the power of community, the power of having like-minded people around you that encourage you, that inspire you, that you learn from. Company is very important. That's not just in Bhakti Yoga. I think that's just a universal thing. And chanting, I've put here chanting. So for practitioners of Bhakti Yoga, a key part of their practice is mantra meditation. Man means mind in Sanskrit, and tra is a shortened form of another word, trayate in Sanskrit, which means to liberate. So a mantra, in particular the Maha Mantra, which is coming up on your screen right now, is transcendental sound vibration. It's transcendental sound. And what that means is it has a very powerful effect in cleansing the mind and the heart. And cleansing from what, you may ask? The idea is that, as we touched on earlier, we are spiritual beings, but because we're in the environment of the material world, we start to identify with it. We start to think that this is all there is to reality. This is all there is to the absolute. How can there be anything beyond our current experience? And because of that misidentification, we just get entangled in the complexities that come with material life. And so this transcendental sound, this chanting, has the power to actually remind us of our true spiritual nature. Now, the mantra consists of 3 words. Krishna, as we mentioned before, is a name for God that means the all attractive. It captivates our hearts and minds because he's all attractive. Rama is another name for God, which means the source of all pleasure and bliss. And Hare here refers to the energies of Krishna, spiritual energy that we spoke about before specifically. The entire mantra is in something called the vocative tense. Now, what that means is it's a direct address. For example, there's a difference between me saying Sharabihari and Sharabihari. Like, there's a difference because I'm addressing Sharabihari here, and it captures her attention because I am addressing her. So when we chant, it's a direct address to the absolute, Krishna and his energies. So I'll read the mantra for anybody that is not familiar with it. It's Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, I saw some of you joining in on Zoom. Okay, let's do it together. And everyone watching on YouTube, let's do it together. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
So for practitioners of Bhakti Yoga, they approach this mood in a mood of loving devotion that we just touched on, because for them, it's a key part of engaging in a relationship. In that sense, the mantra is translated to, oh Krishna, please engage me in your loving devotional service. Please engage me in this bhakti. But some people, I mean, they may not feel this mood. They may not be familiar with bhakti. I mean, that's fine. You approach it with curiosity. Ultimately, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And so all of these points about the lifestyle of Bhakti Yoga, I could speak until the cows come home about how much it has changed my life, which it has, and many people I know. But ultimately, it's something that you try for yourself. It's something you experience for yourself, even if you are just searching for what the absolute could be referring to. And yeah, I mean, see for yourself. These are just some of the things that I wanted to highlight. And you can see if the philosophy and the practice of Bhakti Yoga in connection to understanding the absolute, the theme for this session, you can see if it resonates with you. There's one more thing I want to mention, and that is that the verses that we spoke about before, where Krishna being the source and the source of the light and the moon, everything rests upon me as, somebody finish it, come on. I'm giving a huge...
Pearls on the thread.
Pearls on a thread, yes, Ravananda. All of those things, what they're doing is they're establishing the supremacy of Krishna. They're showing how Krishna is the absolute. But also, when somebody is connecting with Krishna in this mood of recognizing that there's the personality understanding of the absolute, some would say the pinnacle of understanding the absolute is recognizing that there's a personality there. We can see how meditating on those things can cause us to just think of Krishna as we think of a loved one. I was doing some online shopping the other day and I came across some boots and I just immediately text my mom, just immediately. It wasn't even like I had to think, oh, my mom, she might like these boots. I mean, that was the thought process that was going on, but you just immediately think of someone that means something to you. And so with Bhakti Yoga, the reason why I said it's a lifestyle is we're able to feel the presence of Krishna everywhere. We become conscious of Krishna, and that is Krishna consciousness. So, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And I thought we could just open up Q&A, discussion. Everybody can share what struck them. Let's just have a nice chat. I'll stop sharing. I can see everyone. Jagapalna, some question can come back.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a wonderful presentation. Particularly caught my attention that verse that you mentioned, that when Krishna says, in one sense, I'm everything. I'm paraphrasing it. And I was thinking that Krishna, maybe it's also the 7th chapter itself, that he says that understanding that Krishna is everything, he singles out one thing. This thing, that understanding that Krishna is everything, that will inspire you to begin spiritual life. I wonder whether you can, why it's so important to Krishna that reaching the understanding that he is everything is the ticking point that makes you then practice spiritual life.
That's really interesting. Does anyone have any response to that? Rupa Vilaswamy?
I just wanted to say before I start to try to answer that, that if I just heard a few more classes like this, I think I would have come to Krishna consciousness earlier. But I think it's important to know that Krishna is everything, in the sense that we live a very self-absorbed life, generally speaking, as conditioned persons. People conditioned by this material world, we tend to be very much self-absorbed, self-conscious. And then to realize that there's a being who's so much vaster and so much more as we say, all pervading, all consuming, all knowing, and that we can have a relationship with that person, but we have to take a little bit humbler position. And knowing that he's everything, that then I think that helps us achieve a better perspective than most people live their lives with. That's a pretty simplistic answer, I guess, but that's the way I try to answer it. Yeah.
Thank you. Did you have something?
Ramana.
Oh, Ramananda, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. I really enjoyed the class, and you said it was going to be simple, but it really broke it down and just kind of helped me to understand things a little bit better, just kind of clarify things in my head. And that question at the end that you just asked, Jagapalna, is a really good one. And the first thing that came to my mind is, If someone is everything, and of course that begs the question, is that someone me also? And I think we understand that actually there's a oneness and a difference to this, in the sense that Krishna's everything, but then he's also his own person. So I can't hide anywhere. There is nowhere to hide, even from myself. And so just stop. Can I just stop trying to run away all the time? And yeah, try and form a relationship with this person who is everything.
You remind me of a song, Ramananda Prabhu. I don't know whether there is
sing it.
need to sing it, but
Please sing it.
Maybe some of you know this. It goes more or less like this. There's a part of the song that goes like this: "You running and you running and you run." You know this song?
I think I know.
It's Bob Marley. I'm not sure, but it is a famous song. It goes like this: "You running and you running and you running away. You running and you running and you running away, but you can't run away from yourself. You can't run away from yourself." Does anybody knows this song?
I've heard this, yeah.
Have you?
A long time ago. I can't remember who it's by.
I think Shobhari said she has as well. Interesting. Yeah, and I mean, I guess one of the interesting things is off the back of that song, "Running from Yourself," and what you said, Ramananda, I feel like all of us, to some extent, feel that there's some kind of incompatibility with how we feel we can be happy and the circumstances we find ourselves in. You know, I mean, the material world is defined by being full of something called 4 defects. We'll see that's in the pages of the Gita. Not 4 defects, sorry, 4 things. my ability to speak articulately is just gone now. Just give me a break. There's 4 things: birth, death, old age, and disease. There's just part of material nature. But I mean, no one is happy with those things. We're constantly looking for ways to prolong our youth, for instance, running away from old age. We're constantly trying to stay in some kind of healthy state, but feeling like we're not able to because of the conditions we find ourselves in. We are naturally attracted to the principle of eternality. It's just, all of us are doing it in some way or other. And so it's kind of like, it's a prompt, really. It's a prompt to kind of think, why am I not feeling satisfied? Why are these conditions not satisfying? And then you're just faced with, well, what is everything then? And actually, I mean, it's nice, I guess, because the fact that Krishna is present in everything, it means that wherever we turn, we can try to access that knowledge of the absolute. Rupa Lasser?
The dissatisfaction theme, I just read something in the Bhagavatam, and I wish I could remember word for word, but essentially Prabhupada is analyzing that our dissatisfaction with temporal existence is an indication that it's not our actual position. I didn't phrase that very well, but he's saying our very dissatisfaction with temporality is an indication of eternity.
I like that point as well. You know, relating it back to Jagat Palana's question, because if everything is actually part of one supreme being, there's something really special about that, because it means you're never separate from God. You don't have your own separate world of existence. You are part of something. And one nice thing about that, which Rupa Vilas Prabhu just drew out as well, is that I think what that necessarily means, if I can use that in that sense, what it necessarily means is that there is something that is your nature, because you're part of a thing. You are not just something that gets to choose whatever it is you want to be. Your choice is what you actually are is there is a real true answer to that question. And if you tap into that and cultivate it, you will be more happy than anything else you can do in life. And so there is a definite answer to your happiness because you are part of something and never separate from it. And I really like that. There's so much hope in that idea. There's so much, not just on a sort of a psychological or emotional sense, but also in a philosophical sense. You could see that really sits within the mind in a satisfactory way, and you can rely on it. It's not just an opinion, because there's something in that makes for a really happy life.
Nice. We've just had a comment come in from Ananda Leela here as well. I'll read it out. She's saying that also, if someone is everything and has everything, they don't really need to love us. And so if Krishna loves us, it is true love, because here in the material world, we only know love that comes with some sort of string attached. Nice. Or many strings. Is there such a thing as no strings attached in the material world? I don't know.
Maybe the mother love for a child goes close.
Yeah, very unconditional love. Mom, would you agree? My mom's on the call.
It may be the closest thing to unconditional love, but that doesn't mean it's not without resentment sometimes.
Yeah.
Or irritation. Let's say irritation at least.
But also love for God, it can be with resentment sometimes. Spiritual resentment maybe, but still is a kind of resentment. That's what we hear sometimes from Radharani.
Well, we know also Mother Jasoda used to really get upset with things that Krishna would do, and be very disturbed, very even to the point of when he was fighting with Kaliya, she fainted dead away, turned black and fainted dead away on the ground out of anxiety.
True.
So yeah,
that's nice. I guess that's one of the I forgot to mention this, but I was reading a quote the other day about spiritual relationships, because of course I was focusing on our relationship with Krishna, us being souls and Krishna being the supreme soul in this presentation. But what that also means is that we can have relationships with other souls, other living entities, and they're meaningful because they're based on that soul to soul understanding. And but at the same time, we retain our individuality. And I was reading this comment that Srila Prabhupada, the one who translated this Bhagavad-gita into English, when it actually wasn't common knowledge at all. So Srila Prabhupada is seen as the founder of ISKCON, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And previously this knowledge was kind of reserved for the priestly class in India, or it just wasn't common knowledge. And Srila Prabhupada came over to the West and actually translated this literature and propagated this understanding of Krishna consciousness. So I was reading a quote from Srila Prabhupada, and he said, in the spiritual world, it's not that it's like utopia. He said, it's not utopia. And I love that message so much, because what it means is, in us retaining our individuality, we're naturally going to have our, for want of a better word, quirks. We're going to have our, likes and dislikes and personalities. We all have that. And so, serving Krishna, serving God doesn't mean we merge into this one blob of, okay, yes, I'm a servant and this is what it means to be a servant. And this is, of course, we should be guided by the literature that we have in terms of what constitutes relationship with Krishna. It's not a whimsical thing, it's very scientific. But the way that we can approach that is based on who we are as people. And Krishna accepts that unique relationship that we have with him. and other souls.
I really, really like that you emphasized this point in your presentation as well. I think you delving into chapter 7 in this way made me appreciate it on a whole new level, how explicit Krishna is about this philosophical idea you're talking about, that we are persons and we retain that. And I feel it's such a unique thing because not many people carry this this understanding that when they, even if they believe in some sort of afterlife, they may feel like it's so completely different. It has to be something the opposite of what we're going through here. And for them, for a lot of people, that means even our sense of being an individual, our individuality and our own personality, our quirks, as you said, we get rid of all of that because they feel like that's the source of all the struggles here in the material world. But when you spoke about this and emphasized it, there's something really special about this philosophy because it really drives home the point that there is a perfect state of being an individual.
That's nice. I like that.
And we have access to a process that helps us, I think it was Jagapala that said, nurture us towards blossoming that perfect version of ourselves.
Nice.
What a great message. It's really nice that you have emphasized this thing because I didn't appreciate how emphatic Krishna was about these points.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice that Krishna emphasized it. What a person.
There are some spiritual practitioners that they see the development of the relationship with God as a wrestling. They phrase it as I'm wrestling with God. This idea of actually wrestling with God in rebuilding our relationship. So, as just been correctly pointed out, nothing is denied. Our feelings are not denied. We can express our feeling, even with the some feeling of resentment, of anger, or something, wrestling and stuff like that. It's part of who we are, as just correctly pointed out, and we can channel all that in our relationship with God, in our developing a loving relationship with God.
Thank you. Shari Bahari, did you go ahead?
Yeah, thank you for explaining about the Maha Mantra, or what Krishna, the name Krishna means, all attractive, and Ram, pleasure. But I thought I understood that Hare is a feminine and internal energy of Krishna. Is that correct? Is the female internal pleasure potency of Krishna?
Yeah,
we often hear what Krishna means, we hear what Ram means, and you explained it very nicely. Thank you. But we often don't talk about Hare so much.
Yeah. I mean, so I'll just share from my understanding what I've come across in regards to that. So it said that Krishna as a person has spiritual energy, and that spiritual energy represents, I'm trying to think of the best way to articulate it, represents, is termed pleasure potency.
Mm-hmm. And
that by nature is feminine in its expression. And so Krishna, Krishna's spiritual energy, that very internal, is also described as his internal energy, as opposed to external, which we saw in the verse what is related to material nature. His internal energy, is feminine in nature. That's how I've heard it described. And so those two things, the kind of feminine and masculine, together constitute the understanding of the absolute truth as a person, both of them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Ramananda?
Yes, thanks for explaining that. That could be a really big conversation. I've already got there, but I won't start thinking about that. I've got another question. which is to do with seeing ourselves as people and seeing God as a person. I find it extremely difficult, actually, and I'm wondering, why is that? And why is it so hard for so many people, as we've been discussing? Now I've been practicing a while. I've been kind of chanting, and you know, the 3 C's that you put up, that was nice. That was kind of handy. Trying to cultivate knowledge, chanting, and, you know, good association, company. And still I find it difficult. And I remember before I came to this process, which I do find quite scientific, I was all over the place, and I had all sorts of impersonal ideas, you know, and certainly I was very against the idea of a personal God. And I'm just wondering, what's the reason for this? Or maybe there's more than one reason.
That's really interesting. So I'll share a little bit and then we'll open it up. I mean, actually, I went straight to the personal understanding of the absolute truth. But actually, Krishna elsewhere in the Gita mentions that there are kind of 3 predominant features of the absolute truth. And it's almost like a hierarchy. And I'll say what I mean. So one feature of the absolute truth is solely recognizing the impersonal all-pervasiveness. So just recognizing the absolute truth as just this impersonal energy, or just like this light. And then above that, so when I say hierarchy, it includes the feature below it. So we have, trying to use my hands as best I can. We have the impersonal understanding, and then there's this idea of this localized feature of the absolute truth. How God could be present in a localized form, like in the atoms of everything in this world. In my heart, God can be present there. And then the ultimate understanding of the absolute truth includes all those features, but it addresses God as a person. So it's all of those things, but the ultimate expression of that is said to be God as a person, because of the reasons we discussed, because of this idea of relationship being one of the like the pinnacle of our experiences, really, most people would say. Now, it's interesting that you touched on the fact that that might not be attractive for everybody. And Krishna recognizes that. I mentioned that there are different yoga practices or paths of yoga that Krishna mentions in the first 6 chapters. And the ones that he outlines, their goal is recognition of these other features, this impersonal feature or localized feature. It's not necessarily touching on the personal feature. And so there is a place for people that want to approach the absolute in that way. However, Krishna says, and Prabhupada emphasizes this a lot, the nature of the soul isn't just eternal. There's 3 features of the living, the soul, the spirit soul. Eternality is one of them, which we touched on. But the other one is, one of the others is cognizance, consciousness, being aware, having cognition. And the last one is to be joyful, to be full of bliss. And so if we understand the spirit soul as being situated in this way, we recognize that the only way for the soul to be fully in a state of joyful bliss is through expressing individuality and connecting to the absolute truth as a person, as an individual. Otherwise, those other features of the absolute truth, they won't satisfy that part of our nature. And eventually what's described is, because we're not satisfied, we're just, you know, merged into something, we will continue to have desires because they're not satisfied. And the material world, you know, will just kind of feel like, again, we'll continue the cycle of looking for those desires to be fulfilled in the material world, when actually we were on the right track, but just not fully on the right track. If that makes sense. What do you think, Ramananda?
Thank you. That's a very comprehensive answer. That was very helpful. Thank you. I think Jagapanna.
Yeah, please.
One of the problem with accepting that God is a person and we are eternal persons, and our spirit is that we have bad experience in our material existence with personal life. It is the nature of the material world at the end. So a simple analogy that is given by a spiritual practitioner is that you might develop an infection on your hand. Your hand might get infected. So you say, okay, I have an infected hand. So one option is I just chop off my hand and I get rid of the infection. But by getting rid of the infection, you're also getting rid of the hand. But if we try to cure the infection, we can keep the hand and use the hand and still keep the hand and use the hand. So it seems that there is some level of traumatic experience that we develop in the material world where, personality relationship brings problem, with a lot of problem. Also, the nature of personality, we attach from a very existential problem that personality people, we see that they die to begin with, and while they're living, there's a lot of problem, controversy, argument, and pain generated by personal exchanges. So this resonate within our consciousness and makes us try to instinctively shine away from personal relationship because we feel the pain. We feel there's some level of trauma we have within ourselves that we associate relationship personality with pain. Person, you see a person is someone who brings me pain. Unfortunately, it's a bit harsh, but unfortunately, it seems to be the case. And therefore, for a quick solution, get away of pain, get away of people. Find a place where there's no people, there's no pain. I solve the problem because people cause me pain.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing.
Yeah, I was thinking of that exact thing. I see a couple of last people's hands up, but I just noticed that Shivali's had her hand up for a while. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize what happened with the screen when it rearranged there. So
no, don't worry. I wasn't sure what the rules of engagement were, so I was being very polite. I just wanted to say, and I'm so sorry that I can't stay much longer, but thank you for your presentation. I really enjoyed it, and you're, Reshma, you're clearly a Gyani, a bit like me. So, I love the fact that you can be so reflective and analytical about some of this stuff, because I do believe it's a science. But I'm equally sort of fascinated by this concept of spirit and matter, and spiritualizing matter. And so the themes, and it's such a vast chapter in a way, because it covers so many things, doesn't it? It talks about one's identification with the Supreme and having knowledge of that, but it also talks about other ways, means of spiritualizing matter, and therefore raising one's vibration in the knowledge that you have three modes of material nature. So you've got the goodness, you've got ignorance, and then you've got passion. And it dawned on me recently, and not to overshare, but my father's currently in hospital, and you sort of you very quickly realize that in such environments, actually the energy and the vibration is very low. People who are unwell, who are sick, which can also be synonymous with levels of ignorance, but it's just a state of being, isn't it? And whilst you look at the material world through this lens of one's energy and one's capacity to be in the mode of goodness, actually it allows you to be very forgiving of people, but also being able to spiritualize those environments is so important. So we talk about the mantras, we talk about hearing, chanting, eating, speaking. All of these things enable one to raise that energy into the mode of goodness. And so these are all tools and they're all facets. But actually, if we're able to take a step back and realize that depending on where we're vibrating, actually there are so many means and ways of raising that vibration. Actually, it's such a beautiful thing if one allows yourself to do that, rather than I guess sort of just accepting. But again, that comes, you know, with knowledge. But it's, I mean, it covers so many things, doesn't it? But actually, you know, I guess it's a bit like that, the metaphor that you were referring to, which is pearls on a string. Actually, you need to be able to understand the thread that runs through all of this, and that's sort of what struck me with this chapter.
Thank you. That was so nice. Thank you so much. Really liked that. Go ahead.
Just addressing Ramananda's comment about reluctance, I think, that one is reluctant to seek out a relationship. And I think Jagat Palana did go to the essence of that difficulty. But I'm just remembering that something that happened years ago in Seattle. This boy was objecting to Prabhupada about this bowing down business. He didn't like it. And Prabhupada said, yes, you don't like to bow down? The boy said, no. And Prabhupada said, why? And he said, because I don't feel that I'm better than anyone or that anyone's better than me. And Prabhupada looked at him and said, that is your disease. And this student was very shocked to hear that it was a disease. And then Prabhupada explained that in the course of your life, you will have to bow down to so many things. You'll have to bow down to birth, you'll have to bow down to disease, old age, and ultimately death. So, but if you bow down to a saintly person, then, you know, this will help you. Huh? So, I mean, it's such a simple thing, but, you know, as Jagat has pointed out, our reluctance is based on bad experience. But then if we don't admit our frailty and bow down to a superior being and to a superior philosophy and process, then we're stuck with this little, you know, pouting sort of ego about how nobody understands me, or nobody is worthy of me, or nobody is capable of accepting my greatness. Okay, sorry.
Thank you. I really like that. I just want to quickly say, Shivali, thank you for attending. It was lovely to have you here with us as well, and I hope you can make future events.
Thank you. I look forward to it. Thank you for your time. Hare Krishna.
Horrible.
Is that a wave or a hand, Ram?
It's both. It's a wave and a hand. But is there time? Because I like to hog the mic, so I'm aware of that. But if there's time, I'd like to ask something based on Ananda Leela's point, which I thought was really wonderful.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, we're happy to stay. If anyone has to leave, then please just say bye before you go. But yeah, we can stay for a few more minutes because I am intrigued. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm just going to read again. If someone is everything and has everything, they don't really need to love us. If Krishna loves us, it is true love, because here in the material world, we only know love that comes with some sort of string attached. And what I think the fear in me is exactly that. Krishna doesn't need to love me, so why does he? Why does he keep coming with me birth after birth? What is it that he sees that I don't see? And I find that terrifying, actually. To be honest, I'll be honest. I find because I don't see it, and I think for me that's like such an important thing. If I can actually just accept that he can love me, that would be really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to say something funny, weren't you? But you can't.
Go on, go for it. Why not?
He wants to say, I could see he was poised, and then you rounded
yeah,
off.
go on, so gosh, I'm used to it.
Just like, oh.
I just realized this is going to go out on YouTube, and I'm going to
just
do such
say
a bad
it.
impression of myself. But I was just going to say,
all in jest.
I was going to say, maybe he's staying with you because you're just so funny to look at. Your experiences. There's just so much drama and fun.
Yeah, but I haven't always been like this. I was like a frog. I've been like all kinds of things before.
And I guess it's true what Anandaliya said. We don't have a conception of unconditional love. And like what Jagapana said, that we could see something close to it, but the concept is just so foreign to us. But you're right, accepting it, I mean, I don't know what I'm saying, but I mean, what a wonderful thing. Jagapana, please save me.
Can you hear me? I can't hear. Okay.
Yes, can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay. Krishna sees us for what we really are. Krishna sees us in our true essence. And Krishna knows that we have been loving him forever. But now, temporarily, we just turn our face somewhere else. So what Krishna is doing is trying to recover one of his all-time lover that has temporarily got distracted running after some phantasmagoria. That's the way Krishna sees things. We should think very deeply about this bit, because I think it's crucial.
That I think you're exactly right. And it just reminded me of, there was a class given by Hridayananda Das Goswami. A lot of you on the call know him. And it was a talk on mental health, actually. It's on YouTube, it's great. Coping with depression, I think it was about. And like I said, I'm particularly interested in those topics. But he said, we need to learn to see ourselves as Krishna sees us. And so touching on what Jagapana just said, our conception of ourselves is tainted, because yes, in theory, we can recognize we're a spirit soul and we're part of Krishna, but with that comes a lot of layers of conditioning from associating with this material world. And so our sense of self, we're not just seeing ourselves as, pure spirit souls, it's coming with all this baggage. And that's why looking beyond, I think this touches on your talk, Ramananda, on Krishna and Kierkegaard. Find it on YouTube if anyone's listening. It was great. But it touches on that because who are we? How do we recognize ourselves? And if we do, like Jagapana says, see ourselves as Krishna sees us, then it's a whole other, we're operating on a whole other level. What do you think, Ramananda?
Thank you. Yeah, I really, it makes sense. What you all said makes sense, but I don't get it. It totally makes sense. Like I get it logically. It's like how to see myself as Krishna sees me. That's my intrigue. I have no idea. I don't even know how to see myself as I am now. So maybe it's a philosophical question, or yeah.
I just wanted to say I was joking earlier, obviously, but I was just thinking in relation to what Jagapalna said in response to your Ramananda. And I've only known you a few years, but you're such a close friend to me. I'm so, the feelings that I would have towards you as my close friend.
Some would say only.
Reshma would say only friend.
I'm joking.
But
it's out on YouTube now.
If I, in my own limited, small-minded experience, could be so drawn to you, and Krishna knows you, the deepest version of you for all eternity, as Jagapalna says, to my mind, it's easy. It's already easy to like you so much. So I can't imagine that Krishna is having any trouble. You want me?
Oh.
Rupa Vilasru?
I'm not entirely serious in what I'm going to say, Ramananda, but it's that terror you spoke of that has scared you. This idea that this person keeps pursuing me to love him. In material terms, we call that stalking. So, why is this person stalking me and trying to get me to love? Why doesn't he just stop it? Right? Well, the reason is because he's so full of love that he wants us to share in that. And we're miserable in this situation, and he wants us not to be miserable. And so that's why he's stalking us, but we misinterpret it because we don't know who we are in the first place. Back to the analysis that Jagat's giving, we don't know. If we could understand who we are, then it's no mystery why he would want to love us, because that's what we're all about. This loving relationship with God, and we're perfectly qualified to have it. But we have such a demented outlook on who and what we are that we can't appreciate it. We just feel like we're being stalked. And that's definitely terror, filled with terror if you're being stalked.
Life after life.
Life after life. This person, he won't let me alone.
Even when I'm a bacteria, I'm totally stalkable.
If I might add one point that may try to very specifically address your concern, Ramanda Prabhu, is how Krishna sees me for what I really am, which is I'm his eternal, I've been with him eternally, which is a very long time, by the way. And now I'm just for a very brief short time turned my face, I got distracted with stuff. And how do I see that? That's why there's a recommendation that we see with the eyes of knowledge. That's why so much emphasis, as even in this lecture, there was most of the verses that Reshma highlighted, talking about having knowledge that Krishna is everything and all the things. So this bit of knowledge that we need to have is just knowledge, on the level of understanding, having the knowledge that we are part of Krishna and that we belong to him. We have had since time immemorial, forever, again, a very, very long time, a loving relation with Krishna, which is just very briefly been interrupted. That we need to develop this vision. It's called Shastra Chakshura, I think, the eyes of seeing through the eyes of scriptures, and scriptures give you knowledge. So this should be the dynamic. This understanding that Krishna sees in that way is not just one way of looking at things, is the way to look at things. Because from Krishna's perspective, there's only one way to look at things. There's not just one of the ways. And that's the way it is. That I have an eternal relationship with Krishna. We have been in an eternal relationship with Krishna forever, since time immemorial, forever, which has been temporarily suspended, which is temporary means a very short time. I think this cultivation of understanding should precipitate our devotional life.
Yeah, thank you. So like knowledge, really, really kind of cultivating knowledge so that it becomes clear.
But knowledge, not just in general, this bit of knowledge. Let's be specific. This understanding, this bit of knowledge that I am an eternal part of Krishna. I have an eternal loving relation with Krishna, which is be temporarily interrupted. Let's not dilute things. Let's not divert. Let's focus on this, which is the truth. It's not just one way of looking at it. This is a situation as it's been presented to us. That's why Prabhupada used the word back to Godhead. There's a lot to be read. There's a lot to be understood in the phrase back to Godhead. And Prabhupada was very insistent on that. There's a lot to be understood in that.
Wonderful. Great. What a lovely discussion. Thank you, everyone. I think we could go on forever, but we will bring it to a close for this evening. Thank you, everyone. It was so nice to hear from everyone, and nice to see you all.